Hey guys, and welcome back to another Shadowlands Shadow Priest deep dive video. Uh, yeah, I changed the name of the videos in this series to be deep dives because I think that's pretty catchy. So anyway, so this video is going to be an 18 Halls of Atonement that we did. This is with my push group, which is super nice. I'm finally having some time to play with them this week, so hopefully, my key right now is a 19 Sanguine Depths in my bag, so hopefully we time that later today, honestly, and then the goal is a 20 by the end of the week, at least one. So we have a 20 Theater of Pain as well in one of our healer's bag, so perhaps we could do that one as well. That'd be sweet. Okay, so anyway, right here, before we start the key, a couple things to go over. Um, I'm running Death and Madness. It's a staple. Searing Nightmare. This is a fortified week, so really Searing Nightmare or Misery are your only options. I'm running Psychic Horror. Again, a staple for me. Last Word is pretty good in this dungeon though because there's several things that need to be kicked. But Psychic Horror also gets a lot of value considering there's all the Hunter guys who cast Loyal Beasts, and Psychic Horror can stun one of those. So I run Psychic Horror here every single time. Also, we got Shadow Crash, just because I'm not running the Misery Auspicious Spirits build, so I'm going to run Shadow Crash. I'm running Dissonant Echoes as well for my Potency Conduit, so I'm not going to, I don't have Haunting Apparitions for this, so Shadow Crash is going to be the go-to. You pretty much never run Psychic Link, it's just a bad talent. And then this row is the kind of up in the air row this week. You can either run Void Torrent or Mindbender, pretty much never run Damnation. I don't know if I've ever seen a Shadow Priest run that in a key, or at all, honestly, in Shadowlands so far. Um, so yeah, so your options are going to be Void Torrent and Mindbender, and really, it kind of comes down to personal preference. Um, we're running this key with a Windwalker Monk and a Fire Mage, as you'll see in a second here. So they've got really good AoE damage, which means that you're going to have to do less AoE damage, right? So I'm taking Void Torrent to kind of focus priority damage into targets that need to die more quickly, whereas Mindbender would be better for AoE. Right, so I'm going to run Void Torrent for this dungeon. And then I'm also running Hungering Void. I can see a world where any of these three talents are run in this dungeon. Surrender to Madness could be really good, although it's Sanguine, so Surrender to Madness may not be the best play because maybe you surrender on something and it's about to die, and then it gets healed up by a Sanguine pool and you die instead. So you got to be very careful about that with Surrender to Madness. Also, with Quaking and Surrender to Madness, Surrender to Madness lets you cast while you move, so you want to be careful that you're not like trying to cancel your channels by moving if you're in your Surrender to Madness void form and Quaking comes out, because you won't be able to cancel them by moving. So that's typically when a Quaking Circle appears beneath me and I'm casting something and it's about to go off, I usually cancel just by moving to the side. And you can't do that if you're in your Surrender to Madness void form because you'll just keep casting. So pressing the escape button will work, or just like casting an instant cast spell to cancel your. Actually, the instant cast spell won't work if you're channeling something. So, well, it will if you're channeling something, but not if you're casting like a Mind Blast or another spell that has a cast time. So keep that in mind if you're going to run Surrender to Madness this week, that Quaking is something you need to be more aware of because you can't just cancel it by moving. Ancient Madness could also get a lot of potential. It also has a lot of potential this week because it's a high fortified week. Just the 30% crit that it gives when you first enter Void form could be really, really big. If you have a really large like multiple pack pull, then I could see you popping your Power Infusion and then hitting Void form immediately followed by a Shadow Crash, or maybe even you pre-cast the Shadow Crash as you hit Void form, so that when it lands, you're just barely entering Void form and you get the 30% crit instantly, and then you start spamming Searing Nightmare. I could see that doing a lot of damage, especially on like this first pull here, but I decided to run Hungering Void, mostly just because it's the easiest to play around, I feel like, and you get really good value out of it. And also, I'm kind of focusing on this priority damage build with Void Torrent and Hungering Void. So if there's like a prideful mob or something, that really needs to die, then my plan is to run Hungering Void to get a longer Void form to kill it better, right? With the Void Torrent Hungering Void combo. So anyway, so that's my talent setup for this key. Uh, Although I don't think those are necessarily the only talents you can run in this key. So right here, when we start the key, we're not moving. That's because when you move, it makes these two guys at the front run forward. But for some reason, they ran forward anyway, so I'm not sure. I mean, that's what we've always thought, is that as soon as you move, they'll run forward. But in this key, nobody moved and they ran forward anyway, so who knows what actually causes it. And then, yeah, this pull is pretty standard for us. We pull those two guys. I think there's one dude standing right here. And then we grab these two guys back here and the patrol. So this is a 7-pack. It's really 3 packs, but it's 7 mobs. And this, every single time we do this pull in pretty much any Halls of Atonement key, we pop Lust, I pop my Power Infusion, I'm likely to go into Void Form, and we're just going to blast this down super quick. So, yeah, I pop Void Form, and I throw out my Shadow Crash immediately, and we just start blasting. So, there's not a ton to be aware of here, except for you want to avoid the frontals. Yeah, so the deadly thrusts from those Darkblade guys, and you want to make sure you stop that Loyal Beasts cast. Other than that, there's not a whole lot you got to be aware of. There are a couple guys, I mean, especially if you burn it down that quickly. So there are a couple guys in that pack that cast curses, and those curses you need to be aware of, because if you don't have like a mage or a druid to dispel that, it can be very, very deadly on a high fortified key. Luckily we have a mage, and you'll see throughout this run that those curses give us a bit of a hard time. So something else that maybe I should have done differently, we're going to pull a Loyal Stoneborn here. I'm a Venthyr Shadow Priest, so I can mind control this Stoneborn and he'll fight for me, right? And on a really high fortified key, in fact on any fortified key really, if you Power Infusion these guys, you can cast Power Infusion on these Loyal Stoneborns when you have them on your side, and they will just absolutely destroy things, like do a lot of damage. So perhaps I should have not cast my Power Infusion on that first pack. I should have just Void Eruptioned and thrown out my Shadow Crash and then started spamming Searing Nightmare. It wouldn't have died as quickly, but our mage was doing 26k DPS and our monk was doing 20k. So maybe I didn't necessarily need to do 18k. I could have done like 13 or 14k and we would have been fine. That's probably the difference of my Power Infusion. So if I had held my Power Infusion, then I could use it on this Loyal Stoneborn as we go into this next pull. But instead I don't have it, so this Loyal Stoneborn, as I take control of him, is only going to do regular Loyal Stoneborn damage, which is not a small number in a high fortified key. So I'm not too worried about it, but I mean, in the future, I think it's really important that we play around these Loyal Stoneborns on these really high fortified keys. So in the future, I think I'm going to hold my Power Infusion for this, and then only use it basically whenever I have a Loyal Stoneborn. So as you can see right here, I'm doing like 10k DPS. A decent amount of that is not just me, it's also the Loyal Stoneborn. And if I had Power Infusioned him, I would be doing something more like 15, 16k probably. Okay, so right there, let me explain that real quick. So you can see my nameplates are set up. I'm colorblind, as I've mentioned in the past. So my nameplates, instead of being like green and red when they get angry, I make them blue because it's easier for me to see. So they're like this palish periwinkle color, and when I get aggro on something, they turn dark blue. So that's how I know that I have aggro and I need to run away or whatever. So right here what happens is our tank is kiting, and these vicious Gargans right here, there's 2 of them. There's some weird threat reset situations that go on in this key, where sometimes these Gargans will just not pay any attention to the threat table, right? So our tank should have full threat right now. He just barely leapt away from these guys, and they're all chasing him. As you can see, he's got threat on all this stuff. And he should have threat on these 2. You can see they're not dark blue, but they are coming right at me. Because for some reason, they are aggroed on me. So in the next couple seconds, you'll see they walk up and they just, smack me to death. And that's just, there's really not a lot we can do about that, except for playing further away from these Gargans. And in the voice comms, our tank starts saying, as they start hitting me, he's like, oh, the Gargan's reset. meaning their threat reset, and they're wild and on the loose. So keep an eye out. Our mage tries to DB them even as they like run up and hit me, but he doesn't do it in time, and I die. I could have dispersed, but I honestly had no idea these guys were coming for me. This is kind of what it looks like, this darker blue color when I've got aggro on stuff. Um, but I'm dead here, so obviously I have no aggro on anything. So anyway, yeah, so these guys came and attacked me. Just keep that in mind that sometimes that isn't your tank's fault as far as I can tell. Um, it's just sometimes these Gargans reset their threat. So I end up dying for it. Also, there was that frontal that hit me for 1 tick, I think. I release immediately because it's right here, pretty close to the start. And then I, start running back. And then, yeah, in this pull, excuse me, we just need to, there's 5 of these guys. So we're trying to kill these Gargans. We're trying to stop the Hunt Master, his Loyal Beast cast. That's very important. I'm going to Searing Nightmare right here. But I should probably be saving my Void Eruption for when we get to the Shard. Although, who knows? Yeah, so there's probably not going to be 2 minutes between this pack and the Shard. So I should probably save my Void Eruption for when we get to the Shard, because you need to kill those things really fast, and that's part of the reason why I took Void Torrent, is so I could kill those shards quicker. Anyway, yeah, so I'm gonna put, oh, I do use Void Eruption here. Yeah, so I'm Searing Nightmaring things. I should put Vampiric Touch on some of this stuff, just because it's gonna live for a bit. That Curse of Obliteration goes out on our monk, but it gets immediately dispelled by our mage, which is nice. You can stun that Rapid Fire with Psychic Horror. I'm not gonna though, because you can, as long as it's casting that frontal, it's not casting other more deadly stuff, and you can just avoid the frontal. Unfortunately, the Houndmaster stands in 2 puddles of Sanguine for a while there, which is really unfortunate because we couldn't get him out of it. The only way to get him out of it is if he's, in fact, there's nothing he casts that you can interrupt without stunning him, so the only way to get him out of it is to run far enough away that you're out of his range. And right there, he jumps to rapid fire me again, and he lands in another Sanguine pool, so not great. One other thing that I'm trying to work on more is using my Void Torrent more often, because it seems that a lot of the times I don't get as many casts out of my Void Torrent as I should be able to throughout the course of a dungeon. It's a 45-second cooldown, so that's half of the cooldown of Void Eruption. So if you're using both of those on cooldown, you should get twice as many Void Torrents as you do Void Eruptions, right? I mean, that's just math. But obviously there's a little bit of leeway, like sometimes you save your Void Eruption for a particularly bad pack or something. Sometimes you aren't using your Void Torrent for whatever reason. So, but regardless, I should have more Void Torrent casts on average than Void Eruptions, and right now I don't, just because I'm not using it as often as I should be, which is making me get less value out of it, and that's not good. Oh, so as I'm recording this video, I'm not live streaming right now, but I just got to follow, so thank you, Drangu, if you watch this. Okay, yeah, so it turns out I did have my cooldowns for this pull, so I popped my cooldowns. I'm trying to... Okay, so that, let me go back real quick. This right here is the, so I get hit by a Wicked Bolt right here. Let's see what does all this damage. Oh, so yeah, so I have this curse on me. This is the curse, and when it pops, it does big damage. So I'm about to die right here because, yeah, look at that damage. So, so I have like 60-70% health right here. I get hit by a Wicked Bolt, which doesn't help, and this curse is ticking on me. Our mage should dispel me, but I don't know if his cooldown was up. I mean, if his dispel was on cooldown or whatever, so I should have realized that this was on me. I may have realized this was on me and just thought that our mage was going to decurse me, but he doesn't, and it ends up taking me from almost 80% HP, yeah, 81% HP to 1.7k HP. So that's just because this is a fortified 18, I think. So in really high keys like this, and as we move on throughout the expansion and more people start doing keys like this, keep in mind that that curse, I mean, you probably want to bring a mage or a boomkin or some kind of druid to a key like this, because that curse is quite deadly. I'm 219 item level equipped, so I've got like almost 40k HP, and still it almost one-shots me from 80% HP. So right here we're running back to get out of range of this thrash. Um, it seems to be pretty, and look, I did like barely any damage on that pull because I just was playing it so poorly and got hit big time. And they were blasting everything anyway, so I was mostly single targeting the shard. So anyway, yeah, so it's pretty important that you take as little damage from that thrash as you can. You can line of sight it, but then you lose some uptime on the mob. And you can also just outrange it. It's got a range of like, I want to say 60 yards, 65 yards, something like that. And most casters can cast like 70 yards away. Those numbers aren't probably exactly correct, but it's something along that. Like maybe it's 60 yards is that cast, and we can cast from 65 yards away. Regardless, there's like a little buffer zone where you can outrange the thrash and you can still hit the shard. So that's typically what we try to do in those situations, but I ended up not doing it so well. In fact, none of us did it very well. So on this pack, we've got a bunch of casters, which is pretty dangerous for our tank. They cast this Wicked Bolt, and they just chain cast it, so any like AoE stuns or any this is like this pack is like one incentive to run Last Word, so you can silence things more often. But honestly, it's not worth it because I would rather take Psychic Horror for the Loyal Beast cast on the Huntsmasters. Um, but yeah, so on this pack, I'm gonna cast Vampiric Touch on all four of these things, and then as you can see, our tank has already kicked, our monk has already kicked, and our mage has already kicked. So I'm gonna try and use my kick, soon to stop one of these Wicked Bolts. And then I'm just gonna spam Searing Nightmare. I'm gonna Shadow Crash here in a second, and I should also use my trinket because it's off cooldown. And at some point, I should be using Void Torrent because maybe after I do 2 Searing Nightmare casts and I'm low on Insanity, that would be a good time to use Void Torrent because it's important to get good value out of that spell, and I am working on that. So let's see what I do. I cast a Searing Nightmare, my Shadow Crash, 2 more Searing Nightmares it looks like, my trinket, and then just more Searing Nightmares. And it seems like I'm not using my Void Torrent in this pack, which is probably a bad idea. So yeah, I'm mostly just spamming Searing Nightmares here, and it looks pretty good on the damage meter. But oh, there we go. There's my Void Torrent. I was waiting to put my Devouring Plague on something, it seems, and get the most value out of my mastery, which is good. So I get 2 Curses of Obliteration on me right there, but they don't stack, so I only have the one, and it looks like it goes off. So I didn't get decursed. I take, however much damage. That one didn't seem to be as bad as the other one, but regardless, it's something that can be avoided. So that Obliterator got stuck in a Sanguine pool for a while. We could have kicked it to get it out, and right there I had my Void Torrent running while Quaking was coming out, so I had to cancel it and not get the full value out of it. I've got both my cooldowns for this pack, so I could pop Power Infusion and Void Eruption here. It looks like I do pop Void Eruption, but at least right now I'm saving my Power Infusion. I use my Shadow Fiend, that's good. I should put Shadow Word Pain on the Collector, the other mob in this pull, but right now I'm just focusing the shard, so that's probably an oversight on my part. And right now I switched to the Collector, so I don't know why I didn't put my dots on it earlier. So that cancel cast thing that keeps popping up, I had this weak aura for Quaking. It yells like BAM, the weak aura sound, and then it pops up that stop casting thing if you're casting something that's going to get interrupted by Quaking. But I really, really don't like it these days. In fact, I got rid of that one too that has the big red bar that says Quake, just because it's pretty easy to see when Quaking comes out, and I'm working on not having so much visual noise on my screen. So if there's like this Halkias Anima thing at the top, there's no point in me seeing that. Like I have no need to know what Halkias's Anima is at, right? I just know that we need to kill every single shard and then we can go to the boss. So really, if I could take that off my screen, that's something that I should take off my screen. And then, yeah, anything else that's on my screen that I don't absolutely need, Um, that's one thing that you can work on doing, and something that I should work on with DBM especially is getting less notifications about things that don't actually matter. Right here, this prideful goes pretty badly. Um, three, oh wow, only two of us end up dying there, but still not good. They didn't release so that they would get the prideful buff, and then they release and start running back. I heal up the mage while we're waiting, and then I start healing myself. And our tank jumps down to grab this next pull. I have both my cooldowns up again, so perhaps this is a good time to pop them. Yeah, it looks like it is. So I pop Power Infusion, I pop Void Eruption, and then we start blasting. I'm just spamming Searing Nightmare. You want to Shadow Crash as soon as you get into Void Eruption, not before, so that you get the most value out of your mastery, because when you're in Shadow form, or Void form, you get full value out of your mastery, rather than, depending on how many dots are on the target, it doesn't matter, you just automatically get 3 times your mastery in damage. Yeah, so I popped both cooldowns there. I probably should have saved Power Infusion again, because we pull this Loyal Stoneborn, and having Power Infusion on this Stoneborn as we go into this Shard would be very, very nice, because this Shard pack, as you'll see here in a second, is super deadly, and we end up having a really hard time with it. So if I could have a Power Infused Loyal Stoneborn in this pack, I would be doing more damage, and that would be pretty good. So right there I dispersed because I had the, I think it's called Drain Life or something. It's a dot that I had on me, and it needs to be dispelled pretty quickly, but that's the healer's job, so it's something to keep in mind. Like, you can, pop Desperate Prayer or Dispersion or whatever to keep yourself alive. Right here I cast Vampiric Embrace, just so that we can, so I can help with the healing. You'll notice I'm not doing great damage in this pull, even with, it's almost 3k DPS. I know it's kind of hard to see with this Windows thing in the way, but I'm not doing great damage in this pull, but I am contributing in a couple other ways. Like, I had that Loyal Stoneborn, which contributed for damage, and then now I'm contributing with my Vampiric Embrace. I'm about to cast my Mind Games. I try to save my Mind Games. If I'm going to cast Vampiric Embrace, it's really nice to have a Mind Games cast as well, because your Mind Games will do a really big chunk of healing on at least somebody. And let's see if we can see how much it does. Yeah, so it did 6k. It was a 6k heal to our mage right here, that Mind Games. Not bad, but I mean, it's pretty nice, but don't save your Mind Games just for Vampiric Embrace. But if they do happen to line up, and you have both of them off cooldown, use Vampiric Embrace first, and then Mind Games, because it'll give you more healing, right? The initial damage of Mind Games counts as a single target shadow spell, so it counts for your Vampiric Embrace healing. And then after that, the debuff that the mob has from your Mind Games will turn its damage into healing. So it's like a double dip for the Mind Games healing, which is nice. I should be putting Vampiric Touch on everything in this pack. That's like a running theme for me, is that I don't put Vampiric Touch on stuff as much as I should. And the other thing that I'm doing throughout this key that you can see is I'm running Translucent Image as one of my conduits. That turns Fade into a small DR cooldown. DR stands for damage reduction, in case you didn't know. So I'm trying to fade whenever I can to help with the damage I'm taking. And then right there I started channeling my Void Torrent as the Quake was coming out. So I had to cancel it like immediately, which is not good. Oh, here's a good snapshot right here. So I popped Fade just barely, as you can see. And I did that because this curse, so if we go back just a little bit. So this is when I canceled my Void Torrent, and then these guys are casting Wicked Bolt, they get off, and then they start casting Curse of Obliteration. One is going to go on Schlim, our mage, and the other one's going to go on me. So they both come out, and our mage has to decide, we only have the one curse to dispel. Is he going to dispel himself, or is he going to dispel me? And now we're both at 100% HP, so in my eyes, it's an easy choice. Fire mages have basically 0 self-healing. They can kind of fake it by using Alter Time. If you alter time when you have a lot of HP and then you take a bunch of damage, you can alter time again and you'll restore all your HP. That's kind of like a heal, but it's also like a pretty long cooldown and you have to kind of play around it. So fire mages don't have a ton of self-healing, But Shadow Priests do have a decent amount of self-healing in the form of Vampiric Touch, Devouring Plague. Both of those heal us. Um, Desperate Prayer can heal you. It heals you for 25% of your max HP, which is actually huge, right? And then I've got Fade for damage reduction. I've got Vampiric Embrace, which can also heal me. I can Power Word Shield myself. So as far as casters go, other than like a Warlock, Shadow Priests are really, really tanky. Um, so this is a pretty easy choice in my eyes. He should dispel himself and let me deal with the dot. So what happens is he does end up dispelling himself. I'm stuck with this dot, but it's not such a big deal. I pop Fade so that I'm going to take less damage when it expires. I think it's 7%, maybe 9% reduced damage, which is pretty good. I could also pop Desperate Prayer here, just so that I have a larger health pool, so that in case it does 31k damage, which is the amount of health I have left, it doesn't one-shot me. I have 80% HP, so maybe it will, but if I had popped Desperate Prayer, I would have, 35, 36k HP, and I would survive. And at these high-level keys, it's super important that it doesn't matter how much HP you have as long as it's more than 0. So if I'm going to get hit by something that's like a really big thing, as long as I can keep my health above 0, and I mean that should be pretty obvious, as long as my health is above 0, then my healer has a chance to keep me alive, right? Rather than 0% chance if I die. So Desperate Prayer would be a good idea in this situation when I know this curse is going to expire and Thrash is going on. Let's see what I do. Yeah, so I end up dying. So I should have Desperate Prayed for sure there. The Thrash tick hits me, and then the curse expires, and it does a ton of damage, and I die. So, yeah, so if you can see right here, let me go back to that death recap. I usually only check those death recaps if I'm not sure what killed me. So maybe this is a problem of not paying enough attention. Yeah, so let's see. I checked this death recap. I took 27k damage from the curse. If you recall, I only had 31k health left. So I take 27k damage from the curse, and then shortly after I take a tick of Thrash. It looks like Thrash is ticking for 6.5k damage every second at this level of a key on Fortified. So all in all, it's about 34k damage within 1 second. Now, if I was at max HP, if I was at 100% HP, I would have survived. But that's a huge chunk, and you're hardly ever at full HP on a pack like this. So Desperate Prayer, I don't know if it guaranteed would have saved my life here, but at the very least, it would have helped my chances of staying alive. So this is a moment where had I cast Desperate Prayer, I potentially could have survived. So the other thing I could have done is this gazebo thing right here. It has a line of sight from the Thrash guy right in this corner. I mean, you could be behind any of these pillars, but these pillars count for line of sight. So what I could have done is, if I had seen that this curse was going to break on me, and I had been paying attention and knew that it was going to do like 30k damage, then what I could have done is been like, oh, he's thrashing, this curse is going to expire, I'm about to take a lot of damage, so maybe I'll line of sight so that I don't take damage from the Thrash. But you have to be very careful doing that, because my healer is a Holy Paladin, which means that she's in melee range at all times. And so if I line of sight the mob, I'm going to line of sight my healer. And that means I'm going to get no healing. So if I am going to make that decision and go line of sight from the mob, I am saying to my healer, it's my fault if I die, I'm healing myself. So that's something that I could have done, perhaps, is line of sighted, taken the tick of the curse break, and then Desperate Prayed. I honestly should have Desperate Prayed before the curse break happened, but even if I had just line of sighted, the curse break happens, and then I Desperate Prayer to heal myself a little bit, then I could step back out and get some healing from my healer. I could have even health potted. That's another thing. I didn't use my health pot there. So two things that could have saved my life, but I wasn't paying enough attention. I was at like 80% HP, so I thought I was fine, but in reality, it was pretty telegraphed. I had this dot on me for 5 seconds, and I know that it's going to do a ton of damage because it did a ton of damage to me earlier in the dungeon. So this is just like a presence of mind thing that I need to work on, is being aware that this thing's gonna burst. The thrash is going on. There's a lot of damage going out right now. I seem safe, but in reality I'm not, so I need to do something about it. So I end up dying for it. And then if you'll watch, this pack ends up being very deadly. Uh, I release my spirit. I start heading back. If you just watch the health bars on the side, you'll see that they start to fluctuate pretty good. So actually, right there, they're not really changing at all. So that's nice. But then the thrash starts going out. Our tank almost dies. Sin Quake happens. Yeah, and then everybody's like almost dead. So honestly, I should definitely have saved my power infusion for that loyal Stoneborn because it would make this pack so much easier. On top of that, uh, perhaps I could, I should have done that whole defensive thing and not died to that pack right there using the curse break or whatever. I should have either line of sighted or desperate prayer or whatever. Right here, I have my power infusion. So let's see if I use it on this guy. I have him targeted so that I can, yeah. So I do cast power infusion on him right here, and you'll see if you watch the damage meters. I'm Shadow Priest, obviously. We'll see how it goes. Yeah. So I start breaking 20k. That's from all three of my tendrils plus my power infusion Stoneborn guy. I'm not even popping Void Eruption here, so this damage could be a lot higher, but we have a boss coming up, so I'm being careful about it. And that's just kind of like a pretty good example of why you should save Power Infusion for those dudes, because most of my damage right there was from that Loyal Stoneborn, just because he was absolutely popping off. And the higher key you go, especially on a fortified week, let me go back and show something right there, but higher key you go, especially on a fortified week, the more important it is to power infusion those loyal Stoneborns if you're going to mind control them. So right here, as we finish up this pack real quick, we're going to start this Manifestation of Pride and use it to use the Prideful buff on the boss. It's fortified, like I said, so the bosses aren't nearly as deadly as they could be. Something that our healer has been trying to get us to do is all stand on the same side of the boss so that she can stand opposite of us. And we are supposed to also stand near melee so that she can hit us with, like, I think she's got some frontal heals or something that will heal. Like, it makes healing for her easier, at least, is what she's told us. So our mage is standing over here, but the rest of us are, pretty close to melee. But one of the problems with that is, as you'll see, we have quaking, which means that standing close to each other is kind of hard. And on top of that, we have the prideful debuff thing that does the cross, and that can be hard to dodge. So right here, this prideful thing goes on our monk, and usually when we get that, we just don't move so that it's easy for everybody else to dodge. And so I should move probably back this way right now, so that I can dodge this line. But the prideful buff has been out for a while, and I don't know exactly when it's gonna go off. So I kind of step like in this direction, like close to all these other circles, and I end up cleaving somebody. So she does actually back up a little bit to give us more room, but I'm trying to dodge this beam specifically. And so I start to back up just a little bit right there, and then I end up cleaving our tank. He's already got 2 dots of the bleed on him, or 2 stacks. So this is not so great. A positioning error on my part where I probably should have backed up earlier to get out of the way so that I don't cleave people with quaking. But I didn't, so I end up cleaving him and he cleaves me. That's how circles work. So yeah, so not great. So we're finishing up this prideful. I just do my single target stuff on him. That's something that our mage did pretty well right there. I'll go back to show you. With this prideful cross thing, here's another look at that. This next prideful cross thing, he takes it and he can put us like in, so you can think of it as like a frontal, with where the frontal area is a good place to stand, and these are the 2 like edges of the cone. So what he does is he puts us in that area so that he knows we're safe, right? So he backs off and moves this way because That way, these two are definitely not going to hit anybody. And if he could put all of us within this like quadrant of the grid, right, this top left quadrant of his cross grid, then he knows we're all safe. So that's a good thing that he did. And it's easy to do if you're like out at melee and everybody's like kind of in a similar spot, and you have the right orientation of these prideful things. So this is a really good job by our fire mage. And I noticed that he moves over this way, so I try to stand, in that quadrant. So right here, I'm not moving so that people can move around me. That gets pretty important, I think. And then yeah, I have just popped my Vampiric Embrace to help with healing. And then this is getting pretty sketchy. I used my Desperate Prayer. Our mage gets killed right here. And then I get killed by the thing coming across. He was saying in voice chat. So right here, we'll watch. He's taking these pulses. He gets the thing on him, and then he gets killed. So he's got 0% HP, 15 HP. He's running the Night Fae thing that turns him into a pod when he dies, and so he cannot move. So he keeps this cross thing on him, but he just literally can't move. And I should be watching and realize that he can't move, and I should move. But I'm also kind of, this is like a really tense, rough situation where I'm worried about dying. I have dispersion, so I could have dispersed. But right here, I'm trying to finish this Prideful as fast as possible. It's at 20 stacks, so it's doing the most damage it'll do. So I'm trying to finish this Prideful as fast as possible, and so I'm not paying as much attention to our mage. He starts saying, I can't move, I can't move. So I should be moving back a little bit. And it kind of looks like from this angle that I might be far enough back. And maybe I thought that at the time and figured I was safe. But it turns out that I was not safe. Oh, I'm not even sure if that thing... It looks like that thing hit me. But it could be that Prideful pulse killed me. Let's see if we can tell. It looked like there was like a flash of red on my body from the line. Oh, but there is a flash of red every time the Prideful ticks. Oh, and I did pop Dispersion. It looks like I was not... I'm not sure if I got hit by the bolt or if just the Prideful ticks killed me, but for either way, I end up dying right here, so not great. Also, what's going on with this nameplate right here? This nameplate is like far off to the side of the Prideful. I wonder if it's because I have this death thing up. But yeah, so we end up killing this Prideful. I don't release so that I get the buff from the Prideful, and then also it's faster if our healer just reses me right here. Then we're going to move into this boss. So because it's fortified, like I said, this boss is not going to do a ton of damage. The first thing that we're doing on this boss is our tank pulls him all the way back to this wall. We're in like this little cubby thing. It's intuitive to think that, oh, there's this circle that we need to stay in. Let's make as much room in the circle as possible and pull this guy out into the courtyard. And that's not always a bad idea. But what you can do is like what our tank does. If we keep him really close to this wall, then the first thing this guy ever casts is a tank slam, and it leaves a puddle on the ground. So if our tank just backs up to the wall, he'll slam the tank and leave the puddle like right against the wall. And then the next thing he'll cast is this Heave Debris, and he's going to target one of the ranged players most of the time. I'm pretty sure it's guaranteed, but I'm not positive. So what I'm doing is I'm standing in this back corner so that if he does target me with it, it's way out of the way and we don't have to deal with it. And our mage is also doing something similar, standing really close to this wall and kind of far that way. Because the plan is to bait as many of these as we can into this little cubby, and then we're going to move out so that we don't have to deal with these things at all. So let's see what happens. So I'm popping all my cooldowns and everything. My power infusion's not off cooldown yet, but I should probably use it on this fight. Yeah, and then I'm just doing the single target rotation. That's the rotation thing I'm doing. So yeah, so then the Heave Debris comes onto it's targeting me, and I put it like right in this corner. This is like a perfect bait for the Heave Debris. And then I just step out of the way, and then we're never going to have to deal with this puddle, which is super nice. So there will be another Heave Debris before the Refracted Synlight, which is the thing that we need him to be out of this cubby for. This Heave Debris targets me again, and I bait it pretty well again. I put it right next to the other one, so it's not going to be in the way when we go running out. So he uses it, and then as soon as that heave debris goes off, our tank starts booking it to the middle of the room so that we can pull this guy out so that we have room to walk around the circle. And then he starts to cast this refracted sunlight. And now, as you can tell, this puddle is a non-issue, and this puddle is also a non-issue. This puddle is still kind of in the way, but like 98% of the circle is available. So that's something that is easy to do, right? You just stand in the right place, and then you can just move, and you can avoid an entire mechanic. So that's what we end up doing. Oh, he casts another crumbling slam, which is the tank targeting thing. And so what our tank likes to do is put Halkias in the middle of that, so that instead of having for us to run around it, if we put him in the middle of it, his hitbox is big enough that melee can stand right on the edge of it and still hit him, and then that's another puddle that we don't have to deal with. So he puts him right in the middle of it, or close. Oh yeah, he puts him like right in the middle. And then right there is like one of the bugs with this boss. So there are a couple of glaring bugs in Shadowlands still, and this is one of them. So there's something to do with, I think I read like a post about it where if you taunt this guy right as the sin light goes out, he does this. But if you watch, when he casts sin light, those beams spin like crazy. So here's where it goes. He turns and the beams just start spinning like crazy. And because of this, the animation isn't actually lined up with the hitbox for the beam. So we're all going to get hit by these beams, even though the animation for them is not where we are. It's just because that bug where he spins around, now the hitbox for these beams, the beams are basically invisible, right? So they're just going to spin around and hit people, and we just kind of have to play around it. So this is something that it surprised our tank when this first happened, and I'm not entirely sure how it happened, because it seemed like our tank should have full threat at all times on this fight, right? But for some reason, this bug happens, and as we go into this fight, I'm using this animation as well as I can, but then I get hit, our mage gets hit, all of us get hit by the beam, and there's nothing we can do about it. So, I mean, you can avoid getting the bug, I guess, but I'm not positive how, so yeah, we end up taking damage from that beam. Yeah, and then we're still just baiting these heave debris as well as we can. That's why I'm standing still, like, close to this corner, close to this cubby area, so that if he casts heave debris on me, it's out of the way. Our mage baits one pretty poorly right there into the middle of the room. Not a huge deal, because this boss is going to die anyway before he gets another refracted sunlight cast off, but if this were tyrannical, then this pool would be really annoying. And if these beams had gone the other way, he actually did get the next cast off. So if those beams had gone the other way, our mage would have been kind of screwed. He would have just had to blink over or something. So right here, we do a pretty big pull again. Our mage goes to polymorph the patrol so that it doesn't come and get in our way. Then, yeah, I pop Void Eruption, I pop my Shadow Crash, and we start, blasting this pack. I'm going to try and stop pausing as much because we're about 40-something minutes in, and I don't want this video to go too long. So I'm not going to try and pause as much. We get a couple of curses, but they luckily both go on our healer, so she gets dispelled and we're fine. And then yeah, I'm spamming Searing Nightmare on this pack. I should be putting Vampiric Touch on the higher health targets. I should have done that from the beginning, but I'm not for some reason. And I end up doing, yeah, like 10k DPS when I could have done, maybe 12 or 14k or something. So who knows if the Vampiric Touch would be that huge of a difference, but it would definitely help. So my Power Fusion just now came off cooldown. I Void Torrent this guy, which is good, I guess. I should be Void Torrenting more often. Then, yeah, we're just going to finish up this last dude. We kick him immediately so that he steps out of that Sanguine pool. Tubbins and Gubbins spawns at the absolute worst time, so I'm not going to get any value out of them. And then, yeah, we run off. Our healer gets dispelled right there at like a perfect time. What I like to do, so I'm going to pause real quick, to make this easier, because this extra action button will pop up as soon as you're within range of the Stoneborn, whether you're targeting him or not. So what I like to do is I target the Stoneborn so that as soon as he's under my control, I can power infusion him immediately, rather than taking him under my control and then finding him and clicking on him and then power infusioning him. You could also like set him as your focus, I guess, and then click on your focus for him and power infusion him that way. But it's easier for me if I just click on him, make him my loyal Stoneborn, power infusion him, and then go into the pack. So let's see how it goes. Yeah, I power infusion him. Start doing the pack, and he's gonna pop off. He just starts smacking people like crazy. So we got a bunch of ankle biters in this pack that we didn't need. So this might throw off our Prideful a little bit. We end up pulling this Eviscerator and this Reaver because of that. I get the curse on me, so hopefully our mage dispels me. He does, which is good. So this turn to stone gets off. That's something that I think it stuns whoever's in it. So I'm not positive, but because we rarely pull that pack, but I think our tank is stunned right here, and anything that's on the enemy team that's in that circle, right? So any of the mobs that are in that circle, they'll get a buff in that turn to stone thing that gives them like a shield that can be dispelled by Dispel Magic or Arcane Torrent or Spell Steal or whatever. So you can also avoid it by pulling all the mobs out of that circle or just kicking the cast, but that's something to keep in mind. You can also Mass Dispel it off. Yeah, so then my loyal Stoneborn flies away. I'm only doing like 4k damage right here. I think most of that is just because I had the loyal Stoneborn, but there are only 2 elite targets in the pack, and our Fire Mage combusted anyway, so maybe I should have saved. I don't know. I think what I did was the right play, but I end up not getting a ton of damage out of it, right? Because there's just not a ton of damage that my guy could do. And we weren't planning on getting those ankle biters anyway, so who knows. Yeah, so you got to be really careful in this pack. I think it's the Reaver. It might be the Eviscerator, though. One of these 2 guys has a frontal, and it's very, very deadly. I think it one-shots our healer coming up here in a second. So maybe not on that pack, but yeah, so there is a frontal in that pack that you need to be aware of, but we end up not taking too much damage from it. I think our monk took a hit from it earlier, but yeah, so I should be, single targeting this guy down. I use Void Torrent. I'm, putting my Devouring Plagues up as often as I can. You want to try and keep your Devouring Plague uptime really high, so you don't want to cast 2 back to back. It's not a huge deal if you have like a ton of mana, not mana, insanity. If you have a ton of insanity coming in really quickly, like you're in Void form and you have your Power Infusion popped and your legendary is proccing a couple times. In that case, then you can stack your Devouring Plagues. Just go boom boom, 2 Devouring Plagues back to back, because the damage stacks, right? You don't lose any damage by doing that. The only thing you lose is like in a situation like that where I'm not crazy full of insanity. You lose mastery if your Devouring Plague falls off. So it's good to save it. Something I should mention: you can bait those blood torrents. I did a really bad job of it. I should have been standing like kind of like this person was, like way back in the corner, so that this blood torrent is way out of the way. But instead, I put it right in the middle of the room. That's a bad move. Yeah, so then we move into this boss. I like to fade as soon as these guys come out, so they all run towards somebody who's not me, right? And then, yeah, right here is a really good time to have Searing Nightmare, because these guys need to die very quickly. And if they don't, then this Stone Shattering Leap that's about to happen is not going to kill any of them, and that's going to be bad. So Searing Nightmare is really, really good for this situation in particular. You want to group these guys up as fast as possible, and then Searing Nightmare spam like crazy to try and kill them quick enough. So I get the Stone Shattering Leap on me. We manage to kill all of them, and so I, step in the way. Usually what we like to do is our mage, we usually run 2 mages, although recently we haven't been. So usually one mage will dispel our healer from this this curse that stuns people, and the other mage will dispel whoever gets the Stone Shattering Leap on them. But because we only have 1 mage, in this situation our mage should have dispelled me, so that I can, move around with this Stone Shattering Leap. But he didn't. He dispelled himself, and he, in the voice call while this is going on, he says, "Oops," right? I should have dispelled you. So I'm not just calling him out, but He does this, I think, twice during this fight where he dispels someone that he shouldn't have. Um, but yeah, so I noticed that he doesn't dispel me. I noticed that I'm stunned, so I use my dispersion because I'm at like 58% HP. This Stone Shattering Leap is going to hurt really bad, and I can't avoid it. Now, if I was not stunned, then there are ways for you to avoid this Stone Shattering Leap. The damage from it, I mean. So you want to stand here in the center so that all these guys get hit by it. But then, if I was not stunned, I could start channeling my Door of Shadows, so that as soon as the Stone Shattering Leap goes off and he starts jumping in the air like this, I teleport away and then he'll land and I won't take any damage. Mages can blink it, Demon Hunters can jump out of it, or dash out of it, or whatever. Boomkins can do their backwards jump thing out of it. Hunters can disengage. There's all sorts of things you could do. You could even have a priest grip you out of it, right? So if you can't be, as a Shadow Priest, that's something you could do. If somebody else has it, although you would both need to be not stunned, so something to keep in mind. As a Shadow Priest, unless you're playing Venthyr, you have nothing you can do to get out of it. You can't even like body and soul power shield yourself and run out. It's just not fast enough, I think. So the only option would be Door of Shadows, but I end up getting stunned, so I disperse so that I don't die. And I don't die, which is good. And we break all those guys. Another another Blood Torrent goes out. I should be baiting on the walls here. I should also be putting Vampiric Touch on this guy. I do. And I have that dot on me from the Stone Shattering Leap, which hurts really bad. I pop Vampiric Embrace, although there's not a lot of healing that needs to go on right now because everybody's at full health. It's just to get another use out of it. Right here is a good job of baiting the Blood Torrent, although it doesn't go on me. So this Curse of Stone goes out. This one doesn't matter because there's no guys to kill with this. So our mage manages to dispel the monk who has the Stone Shattering Leap on her, and she should be able to dodge this damage. Let's see if she can do it. She does not, so she gets hit. She could have like dashed, done her little roll thing out of there, but I don't know if she had it up or she was thinking of something else or whatever, so not a huge deal. You should also kick these villainous bolts from these guys, especially the ones that are standing at the far edge, so that they come closer. And then yeah, we're gonna need to, this next Curse of Stone, we're gonna need to break those things. So I stand kind of close in case it goes on me. It doesn't. I end up getting stunned. That's another situation where the mage, he dispelled himself instead of the monk. That was a misclick. And then the monk ends up, luckily, getting all of the things anyway, so not a huge deal. And then yeah, we should be focusing this boss, killing him pretty quick right here. So I should be using my Shadow Word Death more often. I use it there, but I should be using it as soon as he hits 20%, and I have got nothing better to cast. And then I'm not going to pop Void Eruption here because the boss is almost dead anyway. And we should just be single target. Oh, I did pop Void Eruption. We should just be single targeting this guy down. Because he's like at 8k HP. He ends up dying, and we're doing just fine. I have my Void Eruption running, so I want to pull as quickly as possible to get the most value out of Void Form. It ends up dropping pretty quickly. That was like a really bad Void Eruption for me right there. I should have saved it for this next pack probably, just because the boss didn't have a ton of HP, so no point really using it there. We DB the Loyal Beasts cast, which is nice. There's another one going off. We Hodge it, so that's good. And then our tank starts running like crazy, or at least he usually does in this situation where you've got all these Gargans. He'll usually start running out the door because these bleeds can be really deadly. Yeah, so there he goes. And right now, because we had that vicious Gargan issue earlier where they turned and killed me, he's saying, as he's running, he's saying, watch the Gargans, watch the Gargans. They're gonna reset, be careful, right? So that people are aware to stand on this side and not, to watch the Gargans, right? So, we're watching the Gargans, they end up not resetting, we Dragon's Breath them, and then, yeah, we end up killing them, so not too shabby. And then this next pull, because I'm Venthyr, we're going to pull a Loyal Stoneborn. There's 2 Loyal Stoneborns in this room, as you can see, one right here, one right here. What we usually do is we pull one with this pack, and then we pull the other one onto the boss. But what we have done in the past is we pull one with this pack, we leave the other one, we kill the boss, and then we come tag this guy, and then we go through the portal, this guy will snap over to the other place, and he can help you clear those AoE things. But it's not like crazy helpful. Maybe if we power infusion this guy and take him over there, it would be more helpful. But I don't know. And we end up not doing that on this one. We've done it a couple times in the past, and it just doesn't feel super worth it. Especially when you can get the Loyal Stoneborn on the boss, which is really nice, especially on tyrannical weeks. So I target him, I power infusion him right there, and then yeah, we're just gonna start blasting this pack. So something that I was trying to do, I took control of him, but I wasn't in combat with any of this stuff. So as he was running, so after I power infusioned him, I should have immediately tagged something and then started running, so that he starts running to fight stuff. But what ended up happening was I ran through this room, and I kind of sat there for a while dodging stuff, and he just ran to me. So instead of doing any damage, he just ran over and was like hanging out with me until I tagged this guy and started hitting it. So I should have tagged something, gotten in combat immediately, and then power infusion him so that he starts doing damage. But I didn't, so that's something to keep an eye on in the future. Yeah, then he just starts popping off, smacking people. I kick that Curse of Obliteration that's targeting me, which is good. I should put Vampiric Touch on more of this stuff. And maybe I will right here, but it seems like I'm not. I'm just spamming Searing Nightmare, which is going to be not as good for damage. Yeah, I should be putting Vampiric Touch on all three of those guys for sure. A Shadow Crash would be nice. I do end up putting Vampiric Touch on this stuff as it's getting really low, which is not as great. And then I do get a Void Torrent cast off, which is good, but I should have Vampiric Touched that stuff a lot earlier. That's just one of those little things that I need to work on more. That I think over the course of a dungeon will be a huge, huge difference. So right here, I'm taking this Stoneborn into the boss, and just watch how crazy these guys are for single target fights. He's not power infusioned. He's just smacking the boss like normal. I'm popping all my cooldowns and everything, obviously, so I'm going to be doing a decent amount of damage. But if you look at the damage meter right now, our Holy Priest is second, and I'm doing almost 14k DPS. A lot of that is because I popped my cooldowns. This is not a power infusion void form though, so it's less, right? It's probably not super impressive, but I also have the Loyal Stoneborn, so we end up doing, yeah, I was doing a pretty decent chunk of damage for the whole first half of this fight. So then the Haunting Apparition, not the Haunting Apparition, the Haunting Fixation guy targets me. I run him over to this lantern. Our Fire Mage is doing a good job of standing by one of these lanterns so that if the next one is targeting him, he doesn't have to move at all. He can just, thing will just immediately run to him and get taken away. I'm doing a worse job of like standing over here instead of standing over there. But there is a bit of nuance to that, because if you're standing over here, you can bait the volleys, the anima fountain stuff on top of these things, and then you have to wait for them to go away before you can walk over there. And that's not great, so... But yeah, if the anima fountain had just gone out like it just did, it's good to stand over by these things. So I run this guy to the next one. I'm holding onto my Dark Thoughts proc for when I'm channeling Mindseer, like that. Then we're only kicking the volleys of power, because we don't have very many kicks. We've got 2 casters, so we don't... And our tank, it's not Tyrannical week, so our tank is not very worried about the bolts. So we were only using our kicks there on the volleys of power and not the bolts. Moving into this next room, this is a good place for Searing Nightmare as well. It's pretty important that we kill these tormented souls as fast as possible. So I'm putting Shadow Word Pain on several of them. It would probably be best to Searing Nightmare all 4 packs and then start focusing one. But our Fire Mage and the rest of us were like, let's start on the back and then move to the front. So we killed those 2 packs in the back before we came to the front at all. Maybe not the best idea. It's probably better to put Shadow Word Pain on everything. So a Searing Nightmare on all of them and then start, blasting. But not a huge deal. I get some serious lag right there, which is super annoying. I get another lag spike right there. Luckily, nothing crazy was happening, and they didn't call for my kick or anything. So, you gotta be careful on these fortified weeks with these manifestations of envy that fixate people, because they will do a lot of damage. So I'm trying to stand, close to melee, so that we can burn them down really quickly. And then I'm basically doing no damage to them. Although I do have my Shadow Word paint on everything from my Searing Nightmare, so that's something that you can do. One second, I'm about to sneeze, sorry. Okay, so we're gonna finish this guy off. Um, yeah, then we're gonna move up here, and as we kill him, we want to have him in this little room up here, so that the Prideful will spawn in an area that we have more room to walk around. Um, and then yeah, we're just gonna single target this guy to death, and then focus down the Prideful. This also gives us more room to spread out for quaking, which is nice. So the Prideful spawns, and then yeah, we're just gonna kill it and then move into the boss. So we're working on this Prideful. I'm not moving when I get that thing on me. Yeah, and then just regular old prideful fighting. Vampiric Embrace might be a nice thing to use here, although like our mage alters time there, and our healer is, like I said before, getting better at healing these. And she's popped wings, so it's probably not. Well, I do end up popping Vampiric Brace there at the end, but she had wings active, so that's probably why I was holding off. And I tell her to let me know when she wants it, so she knew that I had it, and she would call for it when she needed it. So maybe there at the end she did call for it, but I did end up popping it. So okay, so moving into this boss, the really key things to keep in mind here. It's very, very deadly if you get hit by this frontal, and it's also very, very deadly if you get hit by any of the statues. So this Door of Shadows cast, he'll pull everything in. Obviously, it should be pretty easy to avoid. Just don't stand near any of the statues, and then he always pushes them straight out away from him. This Ritual of Woe. So, what you can do with this is something that we do pretty much every time. Our healer, because she's a Holy Paladin, can stand like right in the boss's hitbox and cast Bubble on herself, and she can soak 2 of these lines all by herself and take no damage. And then our tank will always stand in the middle of him and take the other 2. So what I like to do is stand in the way of one anyway, just in case one of them is missing, and because it can be a little finicky to get all 4 soaked. So I try and stand in the way of one. And then the other, for this first one, we're going to do that with the Holy Paladin and the tank. The Ritual of Woe is going on right now, but you see no lines. That's because they're all being soaked by those 2 people. I cast my Void Torrent. I use my Mind Blast proc during my Void Torrent, which I have found out is a bug with the spell. The Dark Thoughts procs are supposed to only be castable while you're channeling Mind Flayer or Mind Seer, but there's a bug where you can cast them while you're channeling Void Torrent still. So whether you want to use that or not is kind of up to you. I've been using it, but you need to not get in the mindset that it'll always be like that, because if they do end up changing their mind and saying, yeah, this is not intended, you should not be able to use Dark Thoughts procs during Void Torrent, and they get rid of the functionality, then you're not going to be able to use it, and it's going to be hard to break that habit. So maybe just use them during your Mind Flayer, Mind Seer procs, casts. But the other thing is, because it's in the game right now, I'm going to use it, right? So it's not something that'll get you banned. It's like a small, tiny little bug that's, arguably, that is a functionality that should be there, right? It's just not in the Dark Thoughts tooltip. So it might be something that they end up leaving in the game. It might be something that they take out. So just keep that in mind. In the future, if you're watching this video in like Shadowlands Season 3 or something, maybe that functionality is not there, and keep that in mind. So at the time of recording this in Shadowlands Season 1, you could use your Dark Thoughts procs during your Void Torrents. So something interesting for those people in the future. Okay, so then I move out of the way. The Ritual of Woe finishes. The Door of Shadows happens. Everything gets pulled in by this telekinetic onslaught. And then I step. So these are all going to get pushed out directly from the boss, right? So I step in between them. I cast my Shadow Crash when I've got all 3 dots up. Um, Shadow Crash is something that you still want to cast in single target. It's not something that you just want to drop entirely in a single target fight. But because it's an instant cast, it's nice, and so I use it. You want to only use it when you have all three dots up, or you're in void form. But usually when you're in void form, you don't want to be casting anything but Mind Blast and Void Bolts, and Devouring Plagues. So yeah, so this Ritual of Woe happens again. Our mage gets in close and casts Ice Block, so he can soak 2 of the beams, and our tank can soak the other 2. So this Ritual of Woe during this boss fight has been pretty much a non-issue because our healer soaked 2 of the first, our mage is going to soak 2 of the second, and our tank soaks 2 both times. And so really the tank is the only person taking any damage, and as you can see, he's taking barely any damage, so that's super nice. I Void Torrent when I've got all 3 up on the target as well to get the most out of my mastery. Yeah, and then that's basically the whole thing. So one more thing that I'll mention before we finish this video real quick is when he casts Telekinetic Toss, if you watch this statue right here, the one he's going to cast it on, it'll turn and face the direction it's going to go. So you can barely see it, but because it doesn't turn very much, but it turns, and that's the way that you know where it's going to be thrown. So what I like to do is I try to keep my camera like really high, like I'm looking almost straight down on myself right now. I guess it's like almost a 45-degree angle, but I try to keep my camera up really high. That way it's easier to tell which direction all those guys are facing. Because especially at the beginning, I almost always play this fight in this corner, and it can be really hard to see this guy in the back if your camera is really low to the ground because the boss and all this stuff is in the way. So if you keep your camera really high up, you can see this guy in the back, and then if he casts Telekinetic Toss on this guy and it's pointing at you, you can see that and get out of the way. So that's like the other thing to keep in mind during this boss fight. Other than that, yeah, super simple, super easy. Halls of Atonement is not a crazy hard dungeon. We timed 18, feels super good. I'm going to do more videos like this in the future, and I'm going to be pushing like crazy with my group. As you can see right there, I get a Sanguine Depths 19. That's the last key I need for Keystone Master. I still don't have Keystone Master, and I'm almost 1500 IO. So the plan is to hopefully do this key later today. If we end up timing that, that's another video I'll put out for sure. So keep an eye out for that, and then hopefully, wish us luck, hopefully we get a 20 Mists or Halls of Atonement or something like that, and we can time it, because that would be super awesome to get our first 20 this week. So okay, that's the end of the video. Thank you guys for watching. Feel free to join my Discord if you have any questions or anything that you want to talk about. I do stream on Twitch occasionally, not super often, but whenever we're like doing a big push day or whatever, I'll stream on Twitch, or for our raids I usually stream. That's a good place to come and ask questions if you have like questions about Shadow Priest and Raid, or stuff that I don't cover in these Mythic Plus videos usually, or if you just want to come chat and hang out with the Shadow Priest. So feel free to follow my Twitch, join my Discord, and subscribe, obviously, like the video, all that kind of stuff, ask any questions or whatever, and I'll catch you guys later. Thanks for watching. Peace.